And on today's show, how to identify job and life stressors inherent in advisors. Part 1 of this week's series, The Psychology of the Smart Advisor, with personal performance expert and money psychologist, Dr. Jack Singer. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician and Innsmouth. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Jack.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here again.
It's great, and I haven't seen you in a long time. And
Right.
If you've never seen Dr. Jack on our show before, you need to go back out to the archives, and you can go ahead and see this, Google it, and you'll see some of the great shows. We had great opportunity. If you haven't ever seen anything with Dr. Jack before, just a little heads up. Dr. Jack's been on ESPN, Fox Sports, Fox News, CNN, The Glenn Beck Show. He's been a psychologist for Olympic players as well as world champions. He's been in the sports area, but now you've migrated over to advisors.
Yes.
I'm wondering, is the same thing that really confronts professional NFL and Major League Baseball players, is it the same that confronts high-end, high-strung advisors and producers?
Exactly, Steve, because in both cases, it's performance fears that get in the way of them performing, and it's the little distractions that we have to identify. So that's actually how I got involved with advisors, because I'd been teaching professional athletes and Olympic athletes and world champions how to develop the mindset of a champion. One day I said, since advisors are struggling so much and they're stressing and so forth and so on, why can't I teach them to have the mindset of a champion so they could overcome every little obstacle?
So all this is transferable.
Absolutely.
Well, in your new book, you have your new book out, The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide, and you can get this on Amazon or go right out to your site.
Yes.
Either one, and order it. When you wrote this book, this is a true guide. It's a really walk through. It's like your old statement you used to say, have couch will travel.
Exactly. This is a guide specifically for advisors on how to deal with every stress that comes down the road. I list on the cover that there are 77 prescriptions here, but there's actually many more because many of them are multiple within them. But every possible stressor that could come down the pike, I've given examples of what to do to overcome them.
Well, when I think about some of the things that are stressors, first thing comes, I got to find new clients.
Right.
Talk about prospecting. I mean, it seems like we're always trying to
Right.
find out, how can I make a new prospect? How
Right.
can I get in touch with them?
Right. Well, what happens with a lot of people when they're faced with prospecting, I'll give you an example of an advisor who I was coaching who said, he tried to find ways to avoid prospecting because he was afraid that he would be disregarded by potential clients, and he took that very personally. And then he was feeling a lot of pressure from his wife, who was making him feel like a jerk because he wasn't getting more business. So the whole thing was forcing him to consider even getting out of the business. So we talked about how to get in touch with the fears you have, the fear of failure, even though it's not really failure if a prospect says, I'm not interested, but how to get in touch with those fears. This is the psychology of what gets in the way of outstanding performance.
When I'm thinking about prospecting, I think about competition. How can I actually look different or differentiate myself against my competition? Competition's a big stressor.
It's a big stressor if you pay attention to it, but you can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do. And think about an athlete. If he's worried about the other guy in the next lane running the race, he's in trouble. He has to just focus on what he has to do because he has no control of what the other person does. But the deal with competition is that you're always comparing yourself, even within the same office. Sometimes they put boards up and who's made the quotas and things like that. So you're worried about looking bad in the eyes of the boss and things like that. These are all unfortunate distractions.
Now, there's a lot of demanding managers, aren't there?
Yes.
And you talk about this in your book.
Yes.
And this is a stressor, in some places, very big stress.
It's a big stressor. They're demanding. They don't treat the advisors as individuals. They treat them all as the same as a group, and why aren't you doing as well as the other? Of course, this happens everywhere. Car dealerships, I mean, the same kind of thing. Anytime you're involved in high-powered sales is what this really is. And the way to differentiate yourself, because that was a wonderful thing you just asked me about, how to differentiate yourself, and I didn't really answer it. But the way to differentiate yourself, Steve, is to learn what I call active listening skills, and I have a chapter on that in the book. So, because your PowerPoint of persuasion with a new client is the first 7 seconds.
Wait a minute, you have 7 seconds.
You have 7 seconds. After that, you're a mediocre guy like everybody else in terms of trying to convince them to go with you.
And your antidote for this 7 seconds, or your remedy, is this active listening.
Active listening, because if you teach yourself to listen instead of trying to compute, well, what am I going to try to sell him? Let's find out for him or her, and the her is a big deal because I have a whole chapter on women too, women investors and so forth, and what advisors should do. But it's a big deal to try to understand the fears and concerns that the prospective client has. Even if you think they're irrational, you shouldn't be commenting on that. You just need to get it first, and that will rivet them to you.
What's the real stressor between my work life and my family life?
Time. The biggest complaint I get from families of advisors is we never see the guy. We appreciate the fact that our husband or wife, it could be the wife, we appreciate the fact that the advisor is conscientious, is really wanting to earn a nice living for us, but you know what, we'd like to have our dad or our spouse home sometimes too.
We come back from the break. We're going to talk more about some of the stressors that impact financial advisors, registered investment advisors, life insurance, and annuity producers. We're going to talk about it all. It's a pathology. We have our Dr. Jack in the house with his couch right here ready for you to lay on. We'll be right back after the break. It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Welcome back to our second segment. Of course, we're with Dr. Jack Singer, formerly the psychologist to all the professional sports with ESPN and some of the places we've talked about, Fox News, Fox Sports, but now he's in our area of our business, really. And really what's really interesting to me is you say all these things you learned with professional athletes are now transferable to our business.
Directly.
I have a question though. In sports, most of your people that you're dealing with are 40 and under.
Yes.
With some of the most highest producers, it's really more baby boomer. Any distinctions there?
No. Doesn't matter. The
It doesn't
psychology
matter.
is the same. Yeah.
Oh.
You're either going to be a successful mindset person at whatever age or you're not. And so I'm going to teach you how to do it because you're not doing it yet.
When I'm looking at family, trying to balance family and my work and my children, and if I'm a little older, my grandchildren, and I'm trying to give equal time, I feel like sometimes we're pulled all over the place. How do we get this under management control?
Well, first you have to understand that to become a workaholic, as it is, and be putting all of your waking hours into your work is not in your best interest or your family's best interest. There's not a significant difference between somebody who works, 20 hours a day and somebody who works 16 hours a day or 8 hours a day. The difference is that the one who does all the work is worried that they're going to lose something unless they just keep doing it and doing it. And what they're really going to wind up losing, like one of the cases that I have cited in the book, is you can develop a serious illness and then you're not working at all. So advisors need to understand that they have to work smarter, not harder.
Well, when you say that, I'm thinking of how many advisors wear multiple hats in their practice. And they're just taking one off and putting another one on.
Right. It's true. Think about when you're genuinely concerned about a client. That means you're concerned as a psychologist to help them with issues they have, a social worker. You may be a family therapist for them because they're telling you, well, there's one child, we don't want to inherit any money, we don't know what to do about that, that child's out of control. You have to be an advisor to all of these things that you don't necessarily have a lot of training in, professional training, but you have a lot of horse sense because you've been down the road before. And this is where your real value comes in, is playing all these roles so that the client or prospective client can really trust that you are genuinely interested in the wealth preservation of their family.
I think of some of the other stresses that you've mentioned in your book. I have a fiduciary stress. I have a responsibility, a stewardship.
Yeah.
But I also have compliance. I have people looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm saluting the flag, being regulatorily compliant.
Right.
That seems to be, especially for people who are security licensed, that seems to be another layer of stress.
It is, but you have to say, there's a phrase now that's overused, but it really makes sense. It is what it is. You can't do anything about it, so you might as well jump on board and do it. You have to deal with compliance issues so that you don't have a problem. And so if you can't do anything about it, you just go with the program. It's like if you can't control something, why waste time worrying about it? You can't control the compliance requirements, they have to be done. So don't spend any energy being upset about it.
When you're looking at turning around a sports athlete, he's been very high performance, and all of a sudden he hits a slump.
Yes.
What's one of the most identifying items way up front that you've seen that are common among these men?
Negative thinking.
Really?
Yes. Here's a formula, Steve, that works for athletes, it works for advisors, works for everybody. Your performance at any time always equals your talent and your motivation minus distractions. So the more distractions, the less your performance will show your real talent. And the biggest distraction is negative thinking.
Now, if a person has come from, let's say, I talked to a gentleman of mine, he's a top of the table producer, he's Forum 400 producer, this is a really big guy. He's suffering this year. Yeah. He hit $750,000 last year in total compensation. Yeah. This year he's at $300,000 in late September.
Yes. Well, something has gotten in the way. It may have nothing to do with the job. Could be a family issue. It could be he had a health issue. I mean, there's a lot of things that would be called distractions that are getting in the way of your productivity. It's not like, well, he was lucky last year and this is where he really should be. There's no such thing as luck. Luck is preparation meeting opportunity.
If I'm trying to come out of negative thinking,
yes,
where's my exit strategy? Okay, let's say I identify it and I say, that's exactly my problem. Right. How do I get out of it?
Okay, the first thing to notice that you have negative thinking is if you use a lot of this term in your thinking to yourself, what if? If you say those two words, the two worst words ever put together in the English language are what if. It's almost always followed by something negative. We know from research that 77% of the thoughts that go through any human being's mind during a day are negative. I hope I didn't do this wrong, I should have done that, what if this happens, maybe this person doesn't like me, negative. We have 55,000 thoughts on the average in a day and 77% of them are negative. And it takes the human body 24 hours to recover from 5 minutes of negative thinking. So this is the battering that we do to our own bodies by thinking stuff that scares us and makes us anxious and so forth.
So this is self-imposed.
It's self-imposed, but we don't realize it because it's a habit. We realize it when someone like me comes along and says, think about what you're saying to yourself right now. And so to get your question answered, where you said, what's the first thing we can do? As soon as you're feeling some kind of negative emotion, whether it's anxiety, anger, irritation, depression, sadness, fear, immediately have a little pad of paper and a pencil or pen and write down, what was I thinking right before I recognized that I'm feeling anxious? And if you do that, you'll come up with the thoughts that led to that, and those thoughts are usually distorted thoughts. You can change them, and in my book I teach you how to change them, how to recognize them, what to do about them.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance department. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you.